Namathu Ratana Tayasa. May I pay homage to Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. My respect goes to my parents and my teachers. Hello, good evening, everyone. So today is 21st, Thursday, the 21st of January 2021. This is Ajahn Sujan from Murapunya Meditation Center, Aberdeen, Scotland. As usual, I'm here with you all tonight to be part of you in this lockdown time that we can't even cross the borders. Hello Yvonne, good evening. Hello Margaret, Manish, and everyone. Good evening. And it's very windy and wetty, all day rain, and I hope that you all are keeping well. This morning when we were having a lunch, I spoke with monks that we may have to repair this boiler in this year's plan, and it happened after an hour later. It was a breakdown. So at the moment we don't have a central heating working, so it's quite interesting. However, we managed to work these sockets, and our sockets are working, so we can turn on this electric heaters. So we'll try maybe again, and if not working the central heating, then we may have to bring the mechanics in. So in the meantime, while I was surfing on a Facebook, I come to know that today is the 21st of year 21, and again the 21st century. So it's a 3/21st today. In the 21st century of a 21st year, and on the 21st day, we are here now. So it will be a memorable day for us that we broke our central heating. Right, so let's go to the topic of the day, okay? So just to give you a background, that we are focusing on the teachings of the Buddha based on the Satipatthana Samyutta, and working on the Ambapali, the first discourse on that group. And so far I have explained the benefit of a mindfulness meditation, and a third benefit. That's the first one is the purification of beings, and then the second one was Soka Parideva Dukkha Domanasanam, which is the overcoming sorrow and lamentation. And the third one yesterday was Dukkha Domanasa, Atankamaya, and which is the overcoming the pain and grief. And I didn't talk much yesterday on the grief yesterday. And grief is something that we all face due to different reasons, different conditions that we come across. Sometimes it may be a divorce, other time maybe there's a breakdown, and broke up with the relationships, or losing someone who we really close to. Even it would be very difficult if that's our parents or our loved ones, or husband or a wife. And obviously this situation will be very difficult to overcome, and sometimes it can make people numbness, and can make people so stressed and anxious and unable to function properly. And sometimes people can turn to alcohol and a deep depression. So these are the symptoms that we can relate to the grief that people face with. And it doesn't mean that I haven't faced it. I also have faced it too, and I presume that every one of us have come across with this grief in our life, one way or another. And now here again, in terms of the dealing with the grief, people sometimes say that, oh, you are strong. You should be able to overcome this, and why you are making this in a big story or something like that. And this is, if you haven't experienced at that time, then you won't be able to understand this grief. But only once you have experienced it, and then it makes sense to you. I remember about 10 years ago, before my parents died, I used to go and give talks or even performing the funeral services. And those days, particularly if that's related to the parents' parents' funerals, then I always found very difficult to explain, and that's simply because those days my parents were there. And it was very difficult to express losing parents. But later on, after I lost my parents, it's become so clear that how difficult it is, and it can be very, very deep suffering. And in relation to that, again, a sorrow, and and during when I was talking about the sorrow, which is quite similar to the sorrow as well. This is grief. And whenever we experience this grief, there is what's called we can't ignore it. Not ignoring it makes you better. Actually, facing with it makes better. The moment when we try to ignore, we simply not accepting that this is happening to me. But rather than ignoring, we accept it. So that's the first thing to do. And in the meanwhile, if someone comes and instruct you to ignore it or forget about it, it's already gone, then sometimes it can be very difficult for us. So that's why in the practice of a meditation, what it helps us is to recognize that this is happening. So here, rather than ignoring it, we simply come to face that this is happening. And which again comes even the practice of Dhammanupassana, that rather than pushing it away, we simply recognize it. And in a practice, basically we are not denying any negative thoughts or negative feelings or even a grief. We simply recognize that I am having it, and this is the cause of me getting into troubles. And that's the way that we can overcome this. So that's why the practice helps us to recognize it. And then further on, sometimes people may see that crying is a form of a weakness, or crying is a form of failure in that relationship. But actually, sometimes crying helps a lot. Helps to release the numbness of your mind or numbness of your feelings. It helps. So that's why don't be afraid to cry. If you really need it, cry it out. And crying really, really helps. Okay? Really helps. And again, overcoming a grief, there is no limits that how long will it take. And sometimes it may take a year for people, sometimes maybe a few months, and other times maybe many years. I have heard so many stories that it took only a few days or even a week. There was a lady, she was, they had a good life together with her husband for a long time, and suddenly what happened was that due to the illnesses, her husband passed away, and she was so cried, and then cried out loud, and and she went into so much grief, and then she thought that how she's going to survive, but within a few days, it appears that she already had someone else. Right? And similarly, there was another story that they were very good, a family, that a husband and wife were very loving family, and then because of the wife always spent a lot of money on expensive bags and shoes and clothes, and he couldn't support him, so that he said that, okay, I'm not going to be with you because it's too difficult to satisfy your desire, but you can take home and you stay in this house, but I'm going away, right? So they just simply had a divorce. And then she felt so sad, and she didn't know what she's going to do. But it happened after she went and work in one of the offices, and she met a good man, and now she's living with that man. Yeah? So like that. So there is no limits. And meanwhile, as I said on a couple of days ago about a boy, only son died due to the motorcycle accident. It took for over a year to overcome this grievance. And further on, again, I can tell you one story that she came to England for a long time, a long time ago, and then after being together for some time, her husband passed away, and she never able to let go any belongings of her husband, and she was so grieved with losing her husband. So that's why there is no time limits that how long will it take. And here I take it like the practice of a mindfulness meditation, as the Buddha said, that the benefit of a practice of a mindfulness meditation is to overcome this grief. Because so it's called overcoming this grief. Yeah? So this, in Pali it is called dukkha domanasanang attangamaya. Dukkha domanasanang, this pain in our minds. So we will be able to overcome it by practice of a meditation. And our problem may come how? How we can overcome this grief. Now, first that we have to recognize it, or acknowledge of that pain, acknowledge of that loss, acknowledge of that grief. The moment when we acknowledge it, it is basically brings you back to the moment, in the present moment, and realizing that this is what is the natural law. One way or another, one has to go first. And sadly, someone who we love went first. Or sadly, because of some reasons, we have some this disputes and we separate. So that's why the first thing is to recognize that I am having it, acknowledging it. And by acknowledgement, it helps to observe that what's going on around us due to this loss. what's going on around it. Yeah. And acceptance of it. And now here there is a story that a few years ago her husband passed away due to the cancer, and then she even came to meditate as well, but she didn't continue practicing meditation. It appeared that before she came to meditation, she had been going through a very deep depression and grief, and took a refuge on the alcohol and always drinking too much. And later when she came to meditate, and after the meditation, she was able to cope with it for some times. And later on, as the COVID-19 hit and there is no connections and no communications and not meeting physically, as a result, she felt like left alone again, and which which again caused her to take a refuge on alcohol again. So that's another very sad story. So that's why the acceptance is very important, that it has happened. And further on, seeking the support. And here, seeking a support here doesn't mean that you do have to have a professional supports at all the time. Actually, seeking a support is finding someone who is there to listen, and it helps. And here again, in the practice of a meditation, what helps us to understand is that we simply recognizing those pains and griefs, and ability to understand that this happened due to the loss, and this happened due to the condition that we are in, and here the more we have attachment, the greater the grief will be there. Yeah? And the practice of a meditation helps us to overcome that attachment from it. Yeah? So that was the grief part that I felt like I didn't explain yesterday a little bit on that. So that's why I thought that I should give it to you on that. So, and the next one is called Nyayas Adhikamaya, which means the establishment, establishing in the path. Establishing in the path. And here, establishing in the path, the Nyaya actually means the truth or the reality or the wisdom. Nyayasa Adhikamaya, establishment. And now here, Nyayasa Adhikamaya is again developing this knowledge in us, the reality, the real knowledge. Now we have to understand that there are two types of meditation in the practice. The one is a concentration meditation, and the second is the vipassana or the insight meditation. In the practice of a samatha or the concentration meditation, we basically practice by focusing on any particular object until our mind fully absorbs in, and that basically mind becomes one with that object. And when mind becomes one with that object, what happens is like mind is fully locked with that object. And here we don't have any wisdom to arise. There is no chance that we can develop a wisdom on that, because our mind is simply addicted or absorbed into one object. And that's why this is not the practice that brings the nyaya or the panya or the wisdom. Whereas the insight meditation is you are developing momentary concentration and aware at all the time. Basically, your mind is always alert and awake. And with that alert and awakeness helps us to understand that nothing is permanent, everything in a flux, changing at all the time. And when we know that everything is going to change, everything is impermanent and nothing is permanent. And things that is impermanent, we will not be accepting it as a permanent entity. Doesn't matter what it is. The moment when we understood that, then we will be not having any sufferings at all, because we have accepted that everything must change. So that's why the first knowledge that we acquire by practice of insight meditation is knowing the change. And further on, Nyayas Adhikamaya basically means developing the Eightfold Noble Path in our life. And now here, what are the Eightfold Noble Path? The first is the Samadhi, the right view. The second, right thought. And then a right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are the Eightfold Noble Path, and which I have explained extensively 2 months ago, which is available on our on our YouTube, so you can go and listen each of them individually. And here, the practice of a meditation helps us to realize this Eightfold Noble Path, and which again, Eightfold Noble Path is the direct path for the liberation, attainment of ultimate happiness. And how one will see this or attain or develop this Eightfold Noble Path. And this is the key here, that practice of a meditation helps us to recognize our feelings. And feelings, normally we take it as an entity which belongs to us. If that's a pleasant feeling, we take it as a sensation, or this feeling should last long, and we develop from that feeling into the emotion. Into the emotion, and that's the reason why we are very elated. We feel very joy and happy, and everything becomes perfect. And in the same time, if that's unpleasant sensations, what happens is that we take every action to reject or resent or eliminate or delete it away. And as a result of that, the classic example is we become a very angry, upset, and those things. And that's simply the emotions. So practice of a meditation helps to understand that these feelings are just a feeling, and that's the right understanding. And this feeling doesn't last long. And so that's the right understanding, that these feelings that we experience doesn't last long. And if you take the Buddha's simile about the feelings, it simply is like arises temporarily, arises, remains for a few, probably seconds, milliseconds, and then fades away. The very moment when we understood this feeling as impermanent, then there won't be any cravings or any desire. When we see things, or when we see a beautiful girl, and it doesn't generate any desire or a lust, or when we hear a beautiful songs, again we will not be dragged away with that songs, like that. So we will have the right understanding of it. So that's the right view. The moment when we have a right view, everything will become against the stream that is going through due to the kilesas nowadays. And the stream that we are is basically we are bombarded by the advertisements, and then we are believing in that, and then we are fulfilling the desires of our senses. And every day and night we are bombarded with, you should get this, you should have that, you should have this, like that. And then we simply trying to feed those desires by consuming it. Continue doing that like that. And which is again, this is the stream that we are going in. And whereas practice of a meditation helps us to recognize that this stream is taking us to the misery. Now it is time to stop here and understand that this is not the right one. So we simply turning against with the stream, the worldly stream that is going through, and we are going into so-called the Dhamma stream, or realizing against with the stream, and that stream will take us towards the liberation. Yeah? So the moment when we have a right understanding, we will be talking good, we will be speaking good, or the action that we do perform also becomes good. Our mind also becomes sharp and calm and collected, and our conscience become clear, and there will be no worries at all. And with this, we are basically walking on a path to the liberation. So that's why the Satipatthana, the four establishment of mindfulness, is the key or the path that leads to the final liberation. So that is the fourth benefit of a practice of a meditation, and this fourth benefit is called Nyayas Adhikamaya, so getting the knowledge towards the enlightenment, or getting the knowledge of Eightfold Noble Path and embodied those Eightfold Noble Path in our day-to-day life, and which will help us to shape our ways and things in life, and then finally we'll go on to the attainment of a Nibbana. So the last benefit, which is the fifth one, is the attainment of a Nibbana, which I will briefly speak tomorrow. So until then, I end here. So thank you very much for listening, and may you all be well and happy, and take care, and we'll see you in a few moments time for the evening chanting and guided meditation. Meanwhile, just information that this coming Monday we are going to have the Mindful Mondays at 12:30. You are most welcome to join. In the meanwhile, David is running this mindfulness learning meditation course, which is going to start on Wednesday, so you can join that as well. So until then, good night, and thank you very much. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Yvonne. We will contact. Okay, thank you, Yvonne. Thank you. We'll see you tonight. Thank you.